music and folk singing have earned him much fame. And I'll tell you a story about the life that he's led, the road he has taken, few may dare to tread. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song. Keep him singing by singing along. In this land of the free, he took many a bold stand and found himself in prison from stage and TV band. But still he never wavered from the course he felt was right. He kept his light shining like a beacon in the night. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song. Keep him singing by singing along. Like a redwood in the forest, he stands so proud and tall, for peace, love, justice, and dignity for all. Now some songs come and go, and some you outgrow, but his songs, like the river through our lives, will ever flow. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song. Keep him singing by singing along. I'll tell you of a man, Pete Seeger is his name. His music and folk singing have earned him much fame. And I'll tell you a story about the life that he's led, the road he has taken, we all may dare to tread. So keep him singing, keep him singing, keep that old guitar and banjo ringing. He hears our voice, he sings our song. Keep him singing by singing along.
And that was Pat Lamanna, who is my guest here on Ecologic. Every day is Earth Day. I'm Ken Gale, and this is Ecologic for February 11th, 2014, here on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and WBAI.org. Last week's Ecologic is on YouTube. This week's will be too. Environment TV is videotaping this show as part of their channel. Go to youtube.com, that's youtube.com, and put Environment TV in the search box. You'll see that when I say I have a face for radio, I'm not kidding. You know, I keep thinking of the new wave band The Buggles. Luckily, that doesn't quite apply to me. The Citizens United Supreme Court case allows polluters such as fossil fuel companies and nuclear utilities to put about as much money as they want to influence elections. There are actions throughout the country to respond to the latest case that is on its way to the Supreme Court. Please get involved. For more info, go to moneyout-votersin.org. That's moneyout-votersin.org. And while preparing for my news segment this week, I went to NIRS.org, NIRS.org, and when I clicked on Take Action, I learned that Senator Baucus of Montana wants to classify nuclear power as renewable energy. Really? The tax subsidies and free insurance that nuclear power gets isn't enough. He wants renewable energy tax incentives for the most poisonous form of energy we've yet invented. Don't let him get away with this. Go to NIRS.org, then click on Take Action on the left side of the screen. Jeez. nirs.org. And regular listener Bill Smirnow pointed out to me that NIRS.org had posted that Senator Bernie Sanders is considering pushing legislation to end the Price-Anderson Act. I have to confess that I sort of shrugged off the, quote, considering introducing legislation, unquote, with the thought, well, wait until he does. But Bill is right. We should let Senator Sanders know that he has support for this and will have more. His office and everyone else's office needs to be inundated with calls, faxes, emails, letters, and visits to terminate nuclear welfare and with it, cancer-causing nuclear power. To leave a message with Senator Sanders or any other senator for that matter, call 202-224-3121. In fact, I called his office using that number yesterday, and I got somebody right away and asked them about Price-Anderson, and I haven't heard back from them. They said they'd call me. Because I told them I had a show with it tonight. It's 202-224-3121. The Interpress Service News Agency has an article by Samuel Oakford on how government fossil fuel and nuclear subsidies are giving the worldwide economy a nearly $2 trillion hit. $1 trillion is $1 million a million times. Now, they got that figure from, of all places, an International Money Fund press release. I link directly to both articles on my EcoLinks page. That's www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-links.html. Friends of the Earth and the Organic Consumers Association are making another push this week to save bees. Bees are responsible for pollinating most of the food we eat and are being killed off by pesticides called neonicotinoids, which are banned in Europe but not here. For more info on what you can do to help, go to www.beeaction.org. It's beeaction.org. You can't rely on garden supply center plants labeled bee-friendly because they're often pre-treated with these poisons. With enough pressure, Home Depot and Lowe's will take a lead and stop selling these pesticides and plants treated with them. Even if you're not a gardener yourself, you surely know some, and all of us eat. www.beeaction.org. And this Friday, Cornell's Lab of Ornithology is starting their backyard bird count and are asking for people all over to tell them what's in their backyards or local parks. They ask you to do this for 15 minutes. It's a great example of citizen science. For more info, go to www.birdcount.org. Birdcount.org. And New York City Friends of Clearwater is having a tribute to Pete Seeger on Friday, February 21st, 6:30 p.m. at Judson Church, Washington Square South and Thompson Street, free admission. Next week, I will be doing a 90-minute tribute to Pete Seeger right here on Ecologic. My guest so far is Ray Corona. And depending on who's on tour and who can get away for a few minutes, I'll have some special guests also. Also on my website are direct links to hear past shows on the WBAR archives. That's www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-logic.html. There is parts 1 and 2 of the Long Beach Climate Solutions shows, one on winter birding, the environmental music show in December, and you can also hear my annual winter predictions show with Tom Weissmuller. I checked this afternoon, it's still there. I keep hearing from people who are just listening to it now, who have listened to it again now that his predictions are obviously true. It's now 5 years in a row that he accurately predicted how much snow and how cold the winter will be. He predicted the polar vortex increase before it happened. It used to be that shows were archived for 90 days, but lately it seems to be closer to 60. So listen to Tom's show while you still can. That's www.comicbookradioshow.com/eco-logic.html. When your air or water is clean, thank an environmentalist. If not, become one. Enough said. This is Ken Gale for Ecologic, WBAI New York, 99.5 FM and WBAI.org. And now I am happy to present Pat Lamanna, a singer, a songwriter, a friend of Pete Seeger's for quite a few years now, and she wrote the song that opened up Ecologic today. How you doing, Pat?
I'm well, thanks, Ken. How are you?
Okay. So now the title of that Pete Seeger tribute song has a story behind it.
Yes.
Let's start with that.
Yes. Well, in 1955, many people know this, Pete appeared before the House Un-American Activities Committee and refused to answer their questions. And I think if you Google Pete Seeger's testimony before the House Un-American Activities Committee or something like that, you'll read his very powerful and stirring words that are just wonderful. Well, he was cited for contempt of Congress for that, and in 1961 he was convicted and sentenced, I believe, to a year in prison, something like that, but he appealed.
It's amazing it took him 6 years to convict him.
Isn't that something? Well, they had a lot of other, a lot of other un-American people to investigate in the meantime. But anyway, he did appeal. In 1962, the conviction was overturned. But in that interim, people wore buttons in support of him, and the button said, "Keep him singing." And I remember wearing such a button.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I thought about writing a song about Pete Seeger, which, by the way, I wrote this song many years ago. It was, I actually sang it in public for the first time around his 70th birthday. I mean, on his 70th birthday. But that was coincidental. I didn't know that it was his 70th birthday. Somebody told me. And I just want to mention that there are other people on that record singing with me. Tom Walker on the banjo, Amy Strum providing vocals, and also Kevin and Carol Becker and Rich Keys all perform on that CD with me.
Well, then Pete heard that song.
Pete heard that song. Actually, he heard it a couple of times. I gave him the CD, and he sent me a postcard, which, of course, I have framed now on my wall.
Right.
And it said, that he enjoyed the songs, and he said, "You should write more songs." Even the one about me was good, though it didn't mention my faults. But then just the other night, I was at a Pete Seeger tribute, and a woman came up to me, and she said that a few years after that happened, I think that was like in 2001 or something like that, 2002 maybe, a few years later, she had the song, and she went up to Pete, and she said, "Oh, Pete, you have to hear this song that someone wrote about you," not knowing that he had already heard it. And apparently he had completely forgotten that he had ever heard it, because he listened to the song, and he said, "Oh, that's a good song." So she just told me this Sunday night.
That's great. And you knew Pete from hanging out with him on Route 9.
Right, at the corner of Route 9 and 9D in Wappingers Falls, which is a very busy intersection. There's all the major malls are in that area. So on a Saturday afternoon, there's cars, thousands and thousands of cars driving by. And we would have this peace vigil. It started just before the Iraq invasion, so around February of 2003. And every Saturday from 12 to 2, a group of us would stand, sometimes a very small group, sometimes a fairly large group. I can't say Pete was always there, but he was there quite frequently. And I also was not always there, but I was there from time to time. And so we would meet and talk, along with lots of other people. If I say I'm a friend of Pete Seeger, I am one of many thousands who can call him friend. He was friends to so many people. He was so supportive and encouraging to everyone who brought him their songs or asked him his opinion. A lot of times he would give his opinion without being asked, too. But he was just a very friendly, outgoing, humble person, just down to earth, and, glad to talk to everybody.
When I first heard that he had passed away, the very first memory I had was the first memory that came back to me was actually a combination of memories of seeing Pete Seeger at meetings. And it would just be a meeting of Clearwater or People's Music Network or whatever. And he'd be sitting in the circle like the rest of us. He never ran the meetings. He didn't facilitate. He was just, one of the gang. However, what he would do is he'd watch the circle, and whenever it looked like someone had something to say, but you can tell by the expression in their face or body language, and if they weren't saying anything, he'd raise his hand, they'd call on him, and he'd point to the person and say, "It looked like she had something to say." And more often than not, she would say what it was that she was thinking, and it was usually very good. And if the person didn't say anything, Pete would leave the circle, go around, and then talk to her one-on-one. And I'll never forget the meeting where this happened, just two people over from me. And he sort of would whisper, "It looked like you had something to say." And so, of course, now it's one-on-one with Pete. And so it would be like, "Well, I was just going to say," and she'd say whatever she had to contribute to the meeting. And Pete would raise his hand and give her credit for the idea. And in this manner, every introvert in the crowd contributed to whatever the meeting was for. And so all those brains got used instead of just the brains of the extroverts. And I just love watching him do that. And any group that he was part of became better because he was there.
That's right. He would encourage and bring out the best in everyone.
And I remember saying that at Pete's funeral in Beacon, 2 weekends ago now, and seeing all the nodding heads all over the room.
Yeah.
Because, of course, everybody's experienced him doing that, and some of them were probably some of the people he called on.
Yeah. I hear so many stories also of people whose songs he encouraged. If he would hear a song he liked, he would go over and ask them to please send him the song, or send him a recording or a lead sheet or anything. And not that he could do anything with all of the songs he received, but he would show a true interest, which was so supportive and encouraging.
Well, I'm going to play another one of your songs, Pat Lamanna, and this one has Pete on it. And let's hear Peace Pilgrim.
Can I just tell a little bit about?
Yeah, you want to? Sure.
Yeah, I want to give a little background to that. I sang that song for him at the Peace Vigil because at the Peace Vigil we would stand around singing songs a lot of times, and he just loved it, and he would ask me to sing it every time he saw me. And finally he did put it on his album, The Storm King, which was his last album. It was nominated for a Grammy. Didn't win, but lost to a venerable opponent, Stephen Colbert. But yeah, and he does in the cut that you're going to play. He doesn't sing the whole song, but he does sing the chorus. And then Jeff Haynes does some amazing things with very interesting music in the background as Pete is telling the story of Peace Pilgrim.
Okay, so here it is, Peace Pilgrim by Pat Lamanna with Pete Seeger.
I remember back sometime could have been the 1950s or 60s or even 70s, I saw a picture in a magazine or newspaper. Medium height, white woman, I believe she had curly hair, but I'm not sure. But on her apron were in large letters, Peace Pilgrim. 2 words one above the other. And she refused to give her name, but said she walked from one state to another. Well, by gosh, just a few weeks ago, I meet a woman from Poughkeepsie in our little peace vigil. She comes and sings songs. Her name is Pat Lamanna, and she'd written a song about this person. It seems that she eventually died somewhere. Maybe she got pneumonia from being out in the cold. Whatever it was, she walked for about 30 years, and somebody finally put out a book about her. She'd been divorced and decided that she would do this strange thing, and Pat's song has a chorus. I will walk until I'm given shelter. I will fast until I'm given bread. I will remain a wanderer until mankind has learned to live in peace. And then Pat has 4 verses giving more details about her, because I'm sure people everywhere, if they picked her up and said, "Can we give you a lift?" would ask her who she was, where she came from. She refused to give her name or where she came from, but it finally came out, and I'm told that only a month or 2 ago, a town in New Jersey where she had come from decided to have a 100th birthday party for her. But Pat's song does not give her name, because she did not give her name when people fed her or put her up overnight. I will walk until I'm given shelter. I will fast until I'm given bread. I will remain a wanderer until mankind has learned to live in peace.
Another beautiful song by Pat Lamanna. This time
I just want to clarify, Ken, that background music is not by me. That was because the Storm King, this album, is a spoken word album. And in most cases, Pete simply tells a story, and the background music is supplied by Jeff Haynes, who produced the album. I'm not sure, actually, who did the actual instrumentation and voice on that track, but it can all be obtained, I'm sure, online, or people could get their own copy of The Storm King, which is a great album.
Yeah.
And I also want to encourage your listeners to go to www.peacepilgrim.org to learn more about Peace Pilgrim, because she was truly a remarkable woman. And my whole song, the 4 verses that Pete alludes to, are on that website. And then I wrote a 5th verse because Pete said to me, you know, you could write a verse about how even though Peace Pilgrim died many years ago, she's standing here with us at this corner and vigiling for peace. So I wrote that verse, and then in the past week I've also written a verse about Pete Seeger. So the song now has 6 verses, kind of long.
Songs do that, don't they? They take over.
They do. They take on a life of their own.
And speaking of taking on a life of their own, WBAI needs you to give it a life. This is a membership drive. You don't hear commercials. Can you imagine any polluting corporation supporting any of the news reports that I gave at the beginning of this show or any other episode of Ecologic? And because of that lack of corporate support, we need to ask you for help. 212-209-2950 is the number. And we do have a premium that has Pete Seeger on it. There's a premium that contains a flash drive. And if you have a computer that's 5 years old, maybe more than that, it'll have a USB port. And you just put the flash drive in the USB port in the back of your computer, and you can listen to all the material that's on this flash drive. You also get a WBAI baseball cap, black, with a BAI logo on it, and a gray WBAI T-shirt. And the flash drive has Pete Seeger interviews and music on it. Now, I haven't heard it, and I'm assuming it's great. I'm assuming it's great because it's Pete. And he was everywhere from wonderful to moving to fascinating to beautiful. There's so many different aspects of Pete Seeger. I don't know which of those aspects are on this flash drive.
Even
but
humorous sometimes.
It contains Pete Seeger interviews and music is all I can see. But there's a Paul Robeson tribute. There's bits and pieces of WBAI from the 60s and 70s, from back when we were the Vietnam War activist station. James Brown tribute mix. Frederick Douglass mix for the 4th of July. Samori Marksaman is on this. Roscoe is on this. George Carlin is on this. Hugo Chavez is on this. Boston Marathon mix is on this. Newtown Memorial mix down. There's a lot of different things on this flash drive. It's $150. That gets you the flash drive and the baseball cap and the T-shirt. And you can call 212-209-2950 to get that package. Or if you just want to be a member of the station, just want to support your Ecologic or WBAI, it's $25 for membership, and that's voting membership. So when we have our local station board elections, you get to vote in them if you're a member of WBAI. You can pay by credit cards. And but it'd be great if you wanted to pay $150 and get all that material. Again, you have to listen to it on a computer, although actually a lot of cars now have USB ports in them. So you can listen to it in a lot of cars now. And that's just growing in number also. So instead of listening to BAI in your car, you can listen to old BAI in your car. $150 package. Give to WBAI.org. If you put, there's a little search box in the upper right corner. If you put Pete Seeger in it, it'll take you to this. $150 donation to WBAI. It's tax deductible. 212-209-2950. Pat, you want to add anything to my little pitch for BAI?
Well, I just want to say that Pete was a big supporter of public radio. I know he supported WBAI. Our local station up here was WAMC, broadcast out of Albany, but it can be heard clearly in Beacon and all up and down the Mid-Hudson Valley. And
yeah, one of the last concerts Pete Seeger ever did was a benefit for WBAI.
Right.
A sold-out benefit, I should add.
But WAMC just completed its fund drive, and it raised more money in a shorter time than it ever had raised before, and mostly because I think so many people donated in memory of Pete. So I would challenge WBAI to see if you can raise $1 million in 4 days like WAMC did. It was really remarkable.
That is remarkable. That is a wonderful challenge to the BAI listeners.
There's probably a lot more of you.
Yeah, there's a lot more people in New York City than there is in the Albany region.
Yeah.
So we can, you can start on that approach $2 million in 4 days. $150 for all those different shows, hours and hours and hours and hours of material going all the way back to the 60s.
Yeah, that sounds like a great premium.
And the Pete Seeger interviews and music were added to it recently. So if you got the BAI's Best of BAI on a Stick, they're calling it, then this is something new. And we are out of time. My goodness. Time flies when it's only half an hour. Mm-hmm. So I want to thank Pat Lamanna, and thank you for all your music, and thank you for being on WBAI.
Well, thank you, Ken. I just want to give a shout-out to Jim Crevo, who used to stand with us at the corner also, and how I miss him. And he used to talk about WBAI and your show a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
But yes, and thank you for having me on this show. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Pat Lamanna and patlamanna.com, easy website to go to. And coming up next is Green Street. WBAI's environmental show Ecologic is on every other Tuesday evening. Listen to scientists, activists, authors, and other experts discuss public policy and give you information on topics such as climate change, air, water, environmental justice, energy, both poisonous and renewable, healthy food, wildlife, transportation, green buildings, and of course connections with other issues. You'll always find out what you can do to make the environment better, and every show starts with news and announcements on environmental actions. With your host, Ken Gale, every other Tuesday at 8 p.m. here on WBAI New York, 99.5 FM, and WBAI.org.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone?